Hey, this is Coach Troy from Tape Fitness, and today I want to do another video on some questions and answers regarding, again, testosterone, but more so like on dosing and dosages and what's viable for TRT for men. Also more in the realm of bodybuilding as far as competing goes in fitness, what these athletes actually take in as far as dosing goes, what other PEDs or anabolic or androgenic steroids that they might be on, that they could be taking to be at that level of expertise as far as the national level versus shooting for that pro card versus the IFBB pros top elite guys, shooting for Mr. Olympia status, So basically, what kind of titration is it going up in these drugs, or is there a titration, or is there an amount that these guys take? What my thoughts are on what I believe in.
How much muscle is it realistic for a natural athlete in bodybuilding or in fitness to gain as far as hypertrophy goes if they don't take anything exogenous, meaning they go on their own endogenous production of hormones and they don't do anything as far as anything synthetic? So they're basically just taking only, in food, natural vitamins.
Well, I guess it depends on the athlete and the natural athlete's background as far as their athleticism goes. Are they first starting out and just working out alone? Have they been training for a long time? What the age of the athlete is, etc. So there's a lot of multifactorial things going on. They could put on, a quick amount of muscle in their first couple of years of bodybuilding. I know I did it. I stayed natural for quite a long time before I had to take the exogenous route for hypogonadal reasons, but that's another story. But long story short, I think an athlete can put on 5, 10, 15 pounds of muscle in their first year or two of bodybuilding and training on their own endogenous production of their own hormonal levels, taking it that they're training really hard, training for hypertrophy, training with high intensity, progressive overload, getting adequate amount of food, rest, and recovery to aid their training, which, the training is creating the stimulus, the food, the over-the-counter supplements, vitamins, etc. Getting rest and sleep, like I said, is fortifying in the recovery aspect of that stimulus. So, yeah, the thing is with a natural athlete, in my opinion, is they're going to end up plateauing a little quicker maybe than the enhanced athlete. And that's not, like I said, that's different for everybody's perspective, I guess, on certain bases of things. But in my recollection, that you're going to probably exceed to a certain amount of level and then stop as far as not proceeding as quickly, making smaller gains. I think a natural can keep gaining muscle, but probably not anything in compared to the enhanced athlete that's on PEDs or extra, exogenous hormones.
What is considered a normal amount of exogenous testosterone to take per week? Is 500 milligrams considered high, medium, low? Is it considered average? Is it considered way above average?
So 500 milligrams to me would be high on an entry-level person or athlete that's first time cycling on anything exogenous related as far as testosterone goes. And more than likely they're going to use testosterone cypionate because that's the normalities of what people use when they first started using testosterone. It could be an anthate or propionate depending on what ester they want to use and their cleaving aspects goes, but 500 milligrams would be a blast. It would be a cycle. It's cycle range territory due to the person taking it. Now, is it considered high or low or medium? I'm talking about aspects on the level of what 500 milligrams would be. I think that's, like I said, that's the higher end, and a person probably shouldn't start with that kind of dosage if they're first starting exogenous hormones. 500 to an athlete as an IFBB pro wouldn't be high at all. That'd probably be in the lower range, especially if it's 500 milligrams total of all PEDs that they're taking. Now we're talking about testosterone derivatives, 19-OR derivatives, DHT derivatives. You combine all these things simultaneously, then you're going to have a higher milligram dosage per week for sure. So 500, if we're talking about just testosterone by itself, they're at least doing that much, if not more, including other derivatives, okay? We're talking about the pro level. The amateur level or state level guys, I mean, it would still be considered medium. I wouldn't even say high. But for a person walking around, just basically lifestyle related, who wants to put on some muscle, who wants to feel better or put on a little bit of muscle in the gym, and it's due to just like training recovery or strength in the gym or what have you, it would be a high dosage in my opinion.
How important do you think the role of GH or growth hormone is and insulin in a bodybuilding's reg?
GH and insulin or growth hormone being 191 amino acids, insulin being lower spectrum amino acids, but more for blood sugar and for perpetuating a shuttle system for your food or carbohydrates, protein, post training. That's when these guys will take the insulin. It's like a shuttle system basically. They also take it because insulin is the most anabolic hormone in the human body. But long story short, growth hormone and insulin is for the highly elite athlete. They used to call it the plateau breaker is when GH was introduced, but it's used for multiple things, but I don't want to go, like I said, too much in the rabbit hole of what each one does. I want to keep these questions more simplistic. But as far as the uses of it, I don't think it's needed for an entry-level bodybuilder or a person that's just wanting to get in shape. It does have health beneficial properties. Growth hormone does, so does insulin. But as far as mixing the two together, insulin's pretty dangerous. I wouldn't recommend anyone using it. Again, I'm not a doctor. This is not medical advice. None of this is on this whole video. I'm just going off of my own anecdotal studies and references on what I believe. GH does make you insulin resistant. So the reason for the insulin resistance, because you want to stay insulin sensitive, especially when you're prepping for a contest or you're a bodybuilder in general. Resistant to insulin can be, diagnosed with a high A1C to type 2 diabetes. So that's not a good thing. We want to kind of avoid those things. That's why people need synthetic insulin if they're on a lot of GH or any kind of growth hormone analog, or too high levels of GH, or, in that aspect of things, exogenously speaking. But long story short, it's for the high elite athlete, and it should be used monetarily, meaning just a small period of your prep or off season or improvement season before going into pre-contest prep.
So what are your thoughts on someone wanting to take SARMS for their very first cycle, and if they've never taken anything before and they're natural, but they want to make that first step and they're afraid of taking anything AAS related, meaning an anabolic or an androgenic steroid?
So my thoughts on SARMs is don't do it. If you are thinking about doing a SARM for your first cycle, you're making a mistake. SARMs is a selective androgen receptor modulator, so it's selective to only the androgen receptors. So it's not cardiovascular or neuroprotective at all, meaning doesn't do anything for your brain, okay? So you need neuroprotection. That's where estrogen comes in. Problem with SARMs, it's too anabolic, not estrogenic at all. There's no balance or homeostasis of testosterone and estrogen, or an anabolic to androgenic ratio like testosterone would be, because testosterone is the most tried and true component to keeping things balanced, keeping things neuroprotective, cardioprotective, meaning your HDL, LDL, cardiovascular profile for your heart. SARMs doesn't do that, okay? So what's going to happen is you're going to have to add synthetic testosterone anyways if you're on a SARM, which negates the whole aspect of being on a SARM to begin with. Or you're going to have to take synthetic exogenous estrogen to get that estrogen balance, okay? Due to negative impact to the HPTA being blocked and not attenuated. And when that happens and there's no negative feedback, there's no homeostasis loop on keeping your body balanced. Like I said, that balance and ratio is gone, which SARMs ends up doing to your body. It crashes your body, crashes the HPTA, the hypothalamus pituitary testicular axis. When that axis is cut, it's gonna be suppression of estrogen, and suppression's not a good thing, okay? It's just gonna cause problems, it's gonna cause hypogonadism, it's gonna cause all kinds of things that you don't wanna do. So don't do SARMs.
So this goes back to the prior question on testosterone replacement dosage. What do you consider a TRT dosage for men? What is the normal range? I know on another video you covered, actually your last video, you covered what TRT should be for women, but you really didn't specifically go over what a TR dosage would be for a man. So what's too high, what's too low, what's the average for a man to take if they've never taken testosterone replacement therapy before?
So in my opinion, TRT for a man would be anywhere from 150 to 200 milligrams of testosterone per week. Obviously split in dosages. At the very least, split, twice a week. So that would be 100 milligrams one day, then 3 days later, another 100 milligrams. You can even go 75 milligrams twice a week would be a good split for the normal TRT. Now, it also goes back to how hypogonadal is the individual. If they're very hypogonadal, they're not a very good genetic respondent to the testosterone, then they're gonna have to maybe titrate up and find out what their congruent dosage is so they can stay hormonally optimal, okay? Because if they're at suboptimal levels, even on 150, 200 milligrams of testosterone, then obviously they're gonna have to titrate up and go up to 250 or 300 milligrams. It's rare, but not everybody hyper responds on the same amount, meaning some people need a little higher, some people need a lower. Your blood work will be indicative of knowing where your levels are congruent with your body. So as far as what you need to do on a weekly basis, that's going to show basically the levels of where you're going to need to be and how many milligrams you're going to have to take, etc.
So for a competitive bodybuilder who's done several shows and say they're going into the national level and they want a pro card, so basically a pro card's on the line, what kind of steroid cycle or dosage would this competitor be on? What would they need to be on to be competitive? And then furthermore, what would an IFBB pro cycle be like? So for a competitor to win a pro show and then want to qualify for like the Olympia and do like the Arnold Classic, like something super high tier, what would a common dosage for an athlete like that be? I just want to be curious to get some numbers from you and what your opinion is on that.
So an IFBB pro wanting to get to the Mr. Olympia or the highest tier, what would a high cycle be or biggest? That's probably what you're asking, right? So that being said, man, it's different for everybody. So like I was going to go back to earlier with the TRT dosages for men, how it's different depending on how you hyper respond to a certain drug. So there's no cookie cutter reg that you can do that's like fomented for each athlete. Like, here's the bodybuilding cycle, do this, here's the IFBB pro cycle, do this. Okay, there's no such thing as there's your cycle, let's just make fucking photocopies of it and just send it out to everybody, okay, depending on what division you're going to be in. That's all bullshit. So it doesn't really work that way. Like, I'm gonna go back to the person himself and this multifactorial thing that's going on. And then I'm gonna try to boil down to the middle a little bit so the audience here understands what I'm trying to say. I can say what drugs that, or PEDs that a top tier bodybuilder would take. And as far as amounts go, it's gonna be in the grams, okay? We're not talking milligrams, we're talking grams. So I hope that kind of gives you an idea of what these guys are doing dosage wise, including growth hormone and IGF-1 and insulin and God knows what else, okay? So, and it depends on what part of the cycle they're on, what drug they're gonna be on, okay? So they're gonna be mixing testosterone, more than likely a fast-acting testosterone because they're prepping, they're dieting. They're gonna be mixing DHT derivatives like drostanolone and metenolone, which is masteron and primobolan. Or they're gonna probably mix mysterolone towards the end, which is, proviron, depending on what part of the cycle they're on, how much estrogen they're holding, how much aromatase inhibitor they're trying to negate or inhibit or mitigate, depending on how much estrogen they hold from the testosterone they're taking. They'll be using these drugs in conjunction with, okay? Also 19-nor derivatives, like trenbolone acetate, for example, or ment. These things will interact with prolactin levels. Some people prolactate a lot, with prolactin. They get sensitivity, they get gynecomastia from the prolactin levels or any kind of nonderone derivative. I say 19-nor, but the parent hormone's nonderone, which is nonderone decanoate, or NPP, which is nonderone phenylpropionate. These are all derivatives of nonderone. But when you break down to a 19-nor, you tweak the molecule of a 19-nor, like when an organic chemist would, that's when you come up with like trenbolone acetate, that's when you come up with mint, stranobol, nilovar, which those other two are kind of more unheard in the bodybuilding scene, but they're all 19-nor derivatives. These will be in the mix pertaining to the genetic propensity or genetic predisposition of the athlete on what side effects they could do without versus what things can expeditiate their process as far as what's going to work the best for their body, subjectively speaking, minus the downstream side effects that could occur depending on what they're taking. I know I'm going a little too like deep in structure here as far as explaining things, but it's going to be so different, you know. But when we're talking about dosages, we're going back to dosages here, it's going to be a couple grams, maybe 3 grams, you know. I'm not saying I've ever done that or ever used that much drugs or PEDs all at once because I didn't have to. I did what I had to do to go pro, and I've only done 1 pro show. So, but we're not talking about Mr. Olympia where, you know, 400 or 500 grams on the line, and that's where your income's coming from. That could probably change the dynamics of things because you're attenuating to a certain level of playing field depending on what all the other athletes are doing. And that's not to say that you need to do exactly what, you know, competitor A, B, and C are doing. You're just thinking that you do, okay? So how much of this is actually fortifying the physique and actually working and not going into downstream negative side effects, and you're actually just pissing it all out? I don't know. I mean, that's something that studies would have to like indicate, or anecdotal studies, you know. The best thing to do, like I said, what anecdotally basically is to subject yourself to knowing what you can and cannot do and get away with, take notation on it, get constant blood work done, check your levels while you're on cycle. Don't just get your blood work done 5 weeks after a cycle or after a PCT when you're trying to get the most prettiest blood work that you can, and then blast everything into the sky and then not ever get blood work again. You're never gonna know what's going on with your body, what you're doing to it, how in the red you are, what drugs that it's compromising or being deleterious to your body versus what drugs are not, which you're able to get away with. It's always good to have a check on your body as far as what you can do, cannot do, what levels are being indicative of what, you know, etc. So you know basically what you need versus what you don't need, and what you need to fully attenuate to adhere to a certain plan to create the best outcome for the event that you're actually preparing for. So hope all that makes sense. I'm not going too confusing here and going too much into detail, but anyways, that's my last thought on that. You guys have any questions on any of this stuff, please let me know. Leave me comments, likes, subscriptions, obviously all helps with my YouTube channel. But thank you very much. Take care and have a great day.